As I mentioned, we're going to be taking the next 30 or so minutes to go over some of the benefits of the Sage Service Operations solutions. We will then be resuming different roles throughout the presentation, starting with a dispatcher, and then going to scheduling and creating a work order assignment. Next, switching roles into a technician role and filling out and completing those work order tickets. Then after all that data is entered into Sage Service Operations, we're going to be looking at what that's going to look like over in the Service Receivables module. At the end, again, I will be concluding with a little bit of Q&A. So first thing I'd like to explain is how Sage Service Operations differs from other systems in the marketplace today. As most systems, most scheduling systems are going to be an add-on to our existing accounting database, that means the two systems are going to need to synchronize throughout the day. So this is going to have transferring between databases such as that mobile device out in the field and your Sage accounting solution. And what that will leave is this potential for latency or data integration issues. And that's not the way Sage Service Operations functions. As other systems, as I mentioned, are going to need to think throughout the day and redirect the information into the accounting system, Sage Service Operations is truly an extension of your 100 Contractor, but in the cloud. Since all of that information is reading and writing back into that Sage 100, there's no disturbances between information inputted by your field employee and what the office staff sees. As we go in, Sage Service Operations is a cloud-based service management solution that directly integrates with your Sage 100 Contractor. The solution is designed to empower your back office to schedule and dispatch work orders and assignments for your employees as well as your technicians. It's designed to save your office staff time as the information being captured in Sage Service Operations is writing directly back into your Service Receivables module. The tool is also designed to empower your technicians out in the field to create work orders on the fly, track time, and create customer quotes directly from that field. Your technicians now will be able to view all service site history on one platform from any device. They will be able to enter review time within Sage Service Operations, creating a seamless and much more efficient workflow. Regarding the time capturing, Sage Service Operations has two different options to choose from. The first is what we call punch action. That's going to give us the highest level of detail. And this option allows your employees to track your employees in the field to track travel time, start time, and when they finish all of the jobs. All that information will be readily available for our employees in the back office to work with. The second option is going to be what we call standard time, which allows us to input the amount of hours spent on a certain job or project. And again, all of that information will be automatically sent into your 100 Contractor. It will also allow us to have the option to enter one person's time in, or even one person enter in time for multiple employees, such as a foreman or maybe the lead technician on the site, can input all the hours for the other employees that have worked on. Sage Service Operations also has an add-on license called Service Operations for Customers. This additional license allows the customers that frequently create service requests can automatically do that on their own, seeing also the current work order statuses, being able to review any previous service requests, and making this process a lot more efficient on both parties. Sage Service Operations will provide you the help that your field technicians need to increase their efficiency. Field and office users can easily enter in time, information for a work order. Field users can now have the ability to record information digitally, creating quotes directly from that field, saving those attachments, and more. The administrator of our companies can also load in or create custom forms that could replace some of those documents you might be currently capturing out on the job. Sage Service Operations will also enable us to capture signatures that can be captured directly from a mobile device. Within Sage Service Operations, you can now see a full work order history, including what you might have already done back in your Sage 100. All of these options are going to be user specific. That gives us the option to choose who does what within the software. And with that being said, let's dive right into the solution. So when we look at on the screen here, again, we're going to be going over kind of a brief overview, as well as resuming a couple different roles. And what I want to first start off is acting as the dispatcher. And what I'm currently looking at is our dispatch screen. This allows us to see a list of all the technicians that are currently in the solution. This list of technicians can also be filtered out into several different ways. We can have it a week view, which we currently see on screen, a 2-week view, so for scheduling maybe a larger project, a month view for maybe even those larger projects or scheduling around PTO or holiday. A day view will ensure that we're maximizing the technicians' calendars and giving us that hour by hour view. In this case, I'm going to stay with the week view that we see on screen. Now, we also have a group of all of these employees, and we can tailor these groups or change these groups to be what we call dispatch groups. So on this drop down right here, I could have a dispatch group be a custom field. It could be a region, it could be a trade, or whatever you guys decide is the best bet. So as I create my alpha team or I have my alpha team, I'm able to view those employees, where they're going to be working on, and then also schedule that out. Now, in order to schedule out, what I would want to do is come into this list over here on the left, which is a list or an open list of all open work orders that are currently available to be scheduled out. We can filter this list in several different ways, and that's going to happen from this little drop down. Now, as we open that up, you can see we have different categories such as site lookup, priorities of call, or even employees. We could also do unassigned, which is simply going to say if a work order has been created, not been assigned to a technician yet, we want to be able to see that. And then once you have the desired filter, again, all we can do is click on the issue, drag and drop that onto the individual. From then, they'll receive an email, or they can receive that email notification, as well as they'll be able to go into their assignments page to view what they have for that week. And again, we'll touch more on that in a moment. So once a work order is assigned, again, it can be also reassigned. So say it is yesterday, or say it's Tuesday, and Jared couldn't do that work order, or that needs to be pushed to another technician. I can also just click and drag that to a different individual and have them take over the job. And what that will do is automatically take that off of Jared's assignment page and now assign that to Alfred. So we're not having to make those phone calls. Whenever a technician looks at that page, they know exactly what they have to do for that day. You could also have, again, if we see this work order 45 we've scheduled out, I could also have multiple technicians working on that work order. So if I want to put in Bruce Wayne as well, I can have that ability here. Now, we're going to go through the process of the dispatcher even more and go through creating of a brand new work order. And again, just like before, you're going to have a couple different ways to do that same functionality. First is I could come up to the little plus up in the top right and hit work order, or we'll show that in a moment what that's going to look like, or I can go to the company record and type in Allstate University, which is who is calling us today. So when I search in the Allstate University, excuse me. Actually, let's go into the Lamb Shoes account. So when we open up the Lamb Shoes account, it takes me to that service site. And in the service site is going to be a list of all work orders that we've previously have done. I can see if they're related. I can see if this is a brand new call or whatever the scenario might be. As we scroll down as well, things like equipment. So if we've replaced equipment, could be a heat pump, could be a rooftop unit, anything like that that we might want to replace. We can also track history to that and any previous work that is done to that. So as I open up view on this particular one piece of equipment, I can see all the service history that pertains to that. So when we're diagnosing and where we have a technician out in the field who's servicing maybe one unit, we can have that information filtered out and just displaying exactly what we want to see, as opposed to showing us the overall high level, everything we've done on this particular service site. I had mentioned earlier of creating quotes, and when we go through that process, is a quote can be generated. And as we see here, I have two quotes, one's approved and one has been submitted. Now, if we imagine that the customer calls back saying, we're ready to move forward with quote 48. In this instances, I can go ahead and approve that quote. What that will do is automatically generate a work order for us to go ahead and schedule out. Now, going back into the work order process is I want to generate a brand new work order. So when I open up generate work order, it's going to bring me to this page. Now, this is going to look identical to what we see up here in this title. However, because we're on the site, it's automatically going to pull in this site details. Scrolling down here to the information field will enable us to see what is going to be the call and what pertains to the technician. Scrolling in the type of call, is it a service, an annual maintenance, is cleanup, or whatever we have. If we want to indicate the source or even priority, we can also do so as well. The estimated repairs and assignment date, this is just going to allocate it to a technician if we want to schedule it. Not going to send out a quote or anything, but on their calendar or on that dispatch page, it's going to block out this amount of hours. Lastly is the assigned to. If you know the technician who is going to take this particular job, you can have it select that individual, but oftentimes the default would be unassigned. So you're going to go back to your dispatch page and leverage that dispatch board. Lastly, it could be what type of call. Well, I know it's getting a little warmer in some parts of the country, so I could say, I tried my AC unit, it's not working. And I can go ahead and generate. Now, again, something I really highlight of the Sage Service Operations capability is when I'm generating this work order, not only creates that inside Sage Service Operation, that's also created now back in your 100 Contractor. So information that can be generated in each device is now able to be edited, altered, or changed in that system. So last thing I might want to do is the dispatch page or the dispatcher could be include any notes. Now, notes could be typed in here, as well as they can also be done from a canned response, such as we have already before. Again, as we have here, yellow is internal, blue's external for the customer facing, and now I'm just going to save and send those that work order. So now that I've saved everything, what I'm going to look at is now my job is complete, and it's going to be on the technician to go from here and complete the work order. What's going to be their view? How are they going to see this information? Well, first and foremost is they're going to go to this assignments page, and as I mentioned before, this assignments page is going to be perfect. This assignments page is going to be a kind of a personal calendar to them, telling them what they have to do for this week. I can collapse previous days as well to show me what I have the remainder, or I could even just toggle to say, just show me what I have today. It's all I care about. We'll see the priority of each of the calls as well, indicated on the left. But in this case, I'm ready to drill into the work order. So while I open up this work order, I can go ahead and drill into that work order 58. It's going to look like the same page as before, where I can review any notes that we've included here or any additional details. Now, we also mentioned in the PowerPoint that we're going to be doing two different types of time. That type of time really is dependent upon your process or what you guys want to do internally. If we want to track punch action, which was the first one, so I'm going to start my travel time, and that clock is going to start to accrue that time. When we do this punch action, what it's also doing is not only tracking that travel time and when we start work, but if we go back to that dispatch screen, it's also updating the calendar as well. So the people in the back office know exactly where you are or where you're working or where you're even moving to. Now, when we go back into the assignment time, now that I've arrived on site and ready to begin work, I'm just going to go ahead and save that time. And now we're going to be tracking that time. Once the job has been completed, I can mark complete assignment, and again, we're good to go. So that's the first action of time. Now, when we scroll into the standard time, which is these hours here, this is where I'd mentioned we could put in how many hours I worked. Now, as we see on screen, there's a lot of different options, and there's a lot of capabilities within the settings to hide or display as many options as we need in this case. So I can hide things like comments, pay groups, pay types, and just have the technician put in maybe how many hours they worked. We could also put in maybe a billable minimum, and it could be something of, maybe we replaced a wire on this unit. We can again tie these back to those individual pieces of equipment, again for future tracking purposes, and then we're going to save labor. You can absolutely have both options displayed like we see on screen. I could go back into the settings and say, I only want my team to use the assignment time, so I can hide this hours field, or even vice versa. So again, we've just put our hours in. Now I want to go into adding parts and components of our job. So when I go in my inventory parts, I'm going to start with adding in an inventory part. Now, you can absolutely look it up by a browser and find in where those parts are located. The technicians can also go in and start to type in, maybe it's a wire we replaced, and you're going to see it's going to pull in all the different options that we have here. Now, when I select the wire, what it'll also do is if we have a unit price in our 100 contractor, that value will automatically be populated here. Now we can also overwrite that value if needed to be. So in this case, I'm just going to say, we'll say 99 cents, and the quantity that we used was 30. We can also pull what location of inventory it is. Is it the warehouse or is it our personal truck as well? Again, saving this information onto that particular work order. Now, going into the assembly parts and how this differs is look at inventory parts as a single item. Item by item, we'd have to populate it. What an assembly part could be is multiple parts, pieces, or components to make up one item. So if we're doing maybe a new AC unit, maybe it's not charged yet, maybe this could be the unit itself, any wiring that's always done. It could also include any refrigerant that we have, any of those components that can get grouped up together. The benefit to having this, and I'm going to select something in the electrical, is again, we can pull that price, but the benefit is the technician only has to select one line item and it's going to pull in multiple components on that front. Again, we want to put in the quantity, and if there's a sale price, it can also, as I mentioned, be overridden. So now we save that assembly. Question always comes up is, okay, Jared, I don't have this, maybe we don't have that need for it, or we're just going to put in a random item, or it's not a common part. How do we do that? That's where you leverage this miscellaneous field. Miscellaneous, again, could be anything like that. It could be that one-time part that we used. It could be maybe a parking fee to park somewhere overnight or at a specific location. And then obviously we want to include what the price of it was to park. And in this case, it's a little expensive. Say it's 30 bucks to park. And save that onto the work order. So again, it doesn't have to be something that's set up in the system. It can on the fly be just a regular any item that we found, or even a box of nails we picked up at Home Depot. Now, scrolling over reports, we'll touch that in a moment. I want to go into the attachments. So while we're on a job, oftentimes the demand to take pictures or photos is more and more gaining each time we're doing this. And something we want to include could be a job site photo or photo of that particular AC unit. So what I'm going to do is I opened up that unit, and it's pulled right here is the list of all the pictures we have. If the technician's on a mobile device, think of it as just going to say, do you want to take a picture with your camera, or would you like to use your photo album? They select the correct one, they pull in this picture, and I can say, pulled in this picture. Now I'm going to give it a title and say maybe the new AC unit. And then we're going to also add that attachment on. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-way street where the technician's putting that in. You could also do it like we just saw on screen and include an image from the back office. Could be also something like a blueprint or what we need to do, and be able to include that in attachments. And then the technician can be in the field and be able to view that information. Once an image is uploaded, what it gives us the capabilities to leverage sketching. And simply elaborating on sketching will be, Sketch allows us to mark up that image that has just been uploaded, just like Paint. And we could also say something like, this unit down here, maybe this needs to be replaced. Or we might mark something up. Whatever we need to do to highlight or indicate to either the customer or future technicians of what's been done. It can also be emailed out from here. So if there's a safety concern, it could be emailed out to the back office team, or simply it can just be saved onto that work order. Now, when it's saved on here, the last thing we can highlight is over in our report field. So I had mentioned earlier there's a ability to create custom forms with the form builder tool. This custom forms, such as this preventative maintenance, could be automatically triggered to say, before we continue on our next job, I need you to capture this information in the field. I could put in things or have it autofill of date, client, who's ever in here. And then we can go through this check sheet of saying, yes, it's good or needs attention. As we see here, I can also require specific fields, such if we're doing that heat pump as well. I can make sure we capture that field, and then even just save those forms. The benefit as well is it has the ability to do if-then logic. So if this form is complete, it can then automatically email this out to, again, the customer, back office team, or whoever might need to see that information. But we'll also be able to go back in the reports and view that service report. Now, when we get this, we can include images onto the particular report, and I can also hide those if I wanted to. If I wanted to hide assignment time because we're using our hours, I could do so there as well. I could also scroll down and capture that customer's signature, all from this mobile device, and then even include, if I wanted to, those images of those saved attachments. So now what we've done is we've gathered all of that valuable data, and that has now been able to be in our 100 contractor. Something I want to show before I go in there is if we're creating a new quote, we can absolutely create quotes directly from here. It's going to look the same way as we just did before. We're going to put in our hours, the parts, and a general over quoting process. If we're collecting payment as well, we do use the Paya or Square application to collect those payments directly in the field. Now, jumping back into that 100 contractor again, we're now completed filling out it as a dispatcher, entering in that information as a technician. Now we want to see where all this information goes in our 100 contractor. And first, I always highlight is going into that 551, that daily payroll. We'll be able to see, let me drag this over, is here are those two different times that we punched in. One is the punch action. That was me putting in that total hours. I worked 2 hours. The other is using the standard time or the assignment time. So I punch a button and it says start time, stop time. So all of that information gets automatically flowed. Now, what does that work order look like over in the service receivables module? Again, I apologize. When we open this up, you're going to see here is the service receivables module. Here is today's date as well. Here is that AC unit not working that we created back in Sage Service Operations. And if you wanted to include those attachments, we can also include those attachments or even be able to view attachments directly from there. I could also enter or see any notes, again, as we have the internal notes that the dispatcher included or external. And then when we go into the details, so when we see here, here's that one item that I replaced using the inventory. And then here is the assembly that we used, which makes up multiple components and pieces of those particular items. Lastly, here is that miscellaneous charge. And then I would say this kind of goes back to your current workflow where we're going to go ahead and get invoiced out accordingly.